arguably not just the best mayor in New York City history, but the most important person who ever lived in New York. Now, there'd be a couple of other candidates. Alexander Hamilton might be one. Robert Moses might be one. Maybe one of our other mayoral candidates might be one. But on anybody's short list, it's going to be DeWitt Clinton.
DeWitt Clinton was mayor essentially from 1803 to 1815. There were 2 periods of 1 year that he was not mayor. He actually served 3 non-consecutive terms, and he was one of 3 mayors in New York City history, along with Thomas Delaval and William Havemeyer, to serve 3 non-consecutive terms, which is very unusual. And Havemeyer was the only one who was actually elected to all 3 terms. DeWitt Clinton was appointed by the governor to be the mayor. That's how mayors were selected then. And during 1807 and 1810, his allies were not in control of the Council of Appointments, and that's why he was not appointed to be the mayor in those 2 years.
I consider DeWitt Clinton one of New York's great governors. I don't see him as one of New York's great mayors. I think the mayors of New York prior to consolidation have a much different role and a much more limited role, and the New York of DeWitt Clinton's time is a very, very small place, New York City. So I'm not sure I feel that that is such an important role.
He came from a political family. I think his uncle was the governor, so he had advantages that the rest of us don't have or didn't have. But just because you have advantages don't mean you take advantage of them. And so when he did serve in elective office, and one of the things we hope from our elected officials is that they will be competent, that they will have a vision, they will be honest, and they will always remember that they're serving the public. You can't fault DeWitt Clinton on any of those things. I mean, he was honest, saw where the people didn't, willing to put his neck out, always thought what was best for his city and state.
He created the New York Historical Society. He created an asylum for orphans. He was very involved in improving sanitation. One of the things that he spearheaded was fortifying New York Harbor, which was a great concern then. We don't think about the mayor having to worry about defense, but in 1812 we had war with Britain, and in the lead up to the war there was a great deal of concern that the British could attack the harbor. So he really took it upon himself to strengthen the fortifications of the city as well. 2 years after he left office in 1815, he ran for governor of New York State, unopposed, which is pretty extraordinary. And he was elected, obviously, and he went on to become one of our greatest governors. When City and State ranked the 10 greatest governors of New York State last year, he came in #1 on the list, in large part because he was the driving force behind the Erie Canal.
He sees the need for the Erie Canal before anybody else does. So when we think Erie Canal, and the Erie Canal, it's not the reason New York outdistances Philadelphia or Boston, but it's the reason, or a big reason. Well, once it outdistanced them, it never looked back, because the Erie Canal gave an all-water route from the Great Lakes across the top of New York State, or the Mohawk Valley, connecting with the Hudson River at about Albany or Rensselaer, which was then and is now in the 21st century the cheapest way to move goods, by water. Before that it was by wagon. It dropped the cost of bringing goods from the upper Midwest to New York City. It dropped it from 90 to 95%. That's a big drop. It also allowed the immigrants who were coming into New York to go to the West also via the Erie Canal. And then New York becomes the great transportation break, because those goods, whether they were fur or flour or whatever it is coming into New York City, they can't go any farther, because you can't take a canal boat to Liverpool. So the canal boats would come into East River, and there'd be big sailing ships right next to them, and silos and stuff like this. All these stevedores and longshoremen loading and unloading, and then you got wholesalers and bankers and everything else. This is the greatest transportation break in the world. Anyways, DeWitt Clinton, in some way, well, it's God's doing too. I mean, he had to create the all-weather route, or all low-level route to the West. But DeWitt Clinton saw it, and DeWitt Clinton stayed with the, after he was governor as well. It's hard to separate this guy. But he was active in cultural institutions, in everything. And you know, it's hard to say anybody made a bigger difference in New York State history and maybe in New York City history than DeWitt Clinton.